Welcome to the celebration of the ancestors. This is a very special service for me, probably the most intimate. And this is where we remember all of those in our sacred lineage. And when I say lineage, what I'm referring to is all the Buddhas throughout the history of this universe, going back into the eons in the past and all the way up to the present. And so we chant the names of all those Buddhas, the mythical Buddhas before time, the Buddha Shakyamuni, and then Ananda and Kashyapa, and all the way down through China and Korea, Japan. And then, of course, I've added some very interesting new names to our own lineage chart. And I remember people like Alan Watts. I remember folks like Henry David Thoreau and modern teachers like Maureen Stewart and Bernie Glassman and Alfred Bloom, and all those folks who are part of our family. And that's what we're really doing at this service, is to remember our family and to lift them up and celebrate them. And in particular, for our order, and our order of clergy is known as the Order of the Dragonfly. That's our holy order. And our Sangha, which is the Dragonfly Sangha, was begun back in around 97. And then we moved here from Cambridge. And then when we moved into the House of Meditation on Jonestown Road, and we were there for 16 years, all that history and all that time as a part of the continuing journey of our Sangha. But there were two individuals who we recognize as the patrons, or the patron saints, you might say, of our order and of our Sangha. So there's a patron saint of the Sangha, the Dragonfly Sangha, and there's a patron saint of the order of the Dragonfly. So the first one is the patron saint of our order, and that is my sister, Christine Marie Stultz. Louder was her married name. And Christine's photograph is above Our Lady altar, recognizing the feminine power of the Buddha. And boy, so many things that I could say about her. You know, she was a great bodhisattva. She was a great teacher. She was one of those persons who had such a huge heart for people. And she was always giving of herself. And as a teacher, she went to college and got her degree in teaching. And then she taught at some private Montessori schools with my wife, Becky. And then she started, you know, as she was wont to do, she wanted to sort of meet the needs of children who were kind of falling through the cracks of the system. And so she started some private schools that were called the Cherry House. And they were wonderful in helping children who were kind of struggling with the regular public school system. And it was magnificent. And she had two of those schools, yeah, two or three actually. And then unfortunately, she died as a result of a car accident. And, you know, even though her life was short, it was so full. And she had such a great presence. She was the kind of person that when she walked into the room, you knew it before she even said a word. And her laugh is something that still echoes in my mind. Wonderful, joyous. Our favorite book in terms of what inspired us was The Catcher in the Rye. And we both felt that we were catchers in the rye. So if you know that story, there's one sequence where the main character has this dream that all these children are running off the edge of this cliff through this field of rye. But the character is reaching out and catching them before they fall. Christine and I both see ourselves this way. And so she was a great inspiration, a great teacher, and she is the patron of our order of clergy. So, deep bows to you, Ito. And then there is the patron of our Sangha. And the patron of our Sangha is my father, John. John Stolz, wow, was a legend of a man. He used to say that he and I grew up together. He was only about 16 when I was born. My father was an orphan. He grew up hard and became a very successful entrepreneur later in his life. The photograph that we honor is one that I had commissioned, a drawing. And that was probably back in 99, 98, somewhere around there when he first got, we had a horse ranch called the Gokanda. And my dad, when he was little, in one of the orphanages, they had a horse ranch. And he said to himself, he made this vow that someday, if he had the means, he would have his own horse ranch. And so in 1998, he made that dream come true. And so the painting I had, or the drawing rather I had of him commissioned, was him on one of his horses at the ranch. And I think that's my favorite memory of him and how I think of him. My father was someone who struggled with his own demons like we all do, and did his best to, in spite of all those things, love and care for his family and friends. And I would say this, the biggest thing about my father was generosity. My dad was generous to a fault. And he was the type of person that if, you were in need, he would help you. Everybody always knew that if they went to John, he would help them. And that was very inspiring to me. The other thing about my father that was very inspiring, besides his gift of generosity, was that he was always, the champion of the underdog. He would always hire people that nobody else would hire. And I remember, him, my father was an interesting sort of paradox. On the one level, he was sort of conservative and he had, very conservative political views sometimes. But at the same time, he'd be the first person to champion a person of color, champion a person, a gay or lesbian person. And he really didn't really care about those things. My father, it was all about the individual. And, famously, when we had the ranch, most of the people that worked on our ranch were immigrants. And my dad had the only black trainer, Harry Thompson, in the whole area. And, I was just always very proud of that with my father, that he always championed folks who were, on the outside a little bit. And so I think those two qualities for me are the two that I have most tried to internalize from him. But he was the great patron of our order. My father was very generous in helping us begin this Sangha, and his generosity continues. And I can never thank him enough for that. It was interesting, towards the end of his life, he really enjoyed our community and coming back to town. And when my dad came to town, it was always an event. And he'd always say, well, get the guys together, And so we would get the Sangha together and celebrate. And it was wonderful, wonderful. So from the patron of our order, we get this deep sense of teaching and reaching those who have fallen through the cracks. And from my father, we get this great sense of generosity and always being a champion of the underdog. So I think those are pretty cool hallmarks to have. So join with me in celebrating John Titan and Christine Yito. My great gratitude to both of you. You live in my heart and mind.